already have a bunch of raised hands, so we'll start off with Amin Majid. Please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum, Dr Shehzad Saleem साहब. मैं कश्मीर से हूँ. तो मैं अपना सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ कि सर, जो हमारा जो तस्वर है जो अज़ाब कब्र जो है, कब्र के मुतालिक जो है, कि जैसे कुरान पाक से भी ये वाज़ेह होता है कि 2-3 तरह के जो ग्रुप जो है, यानी एक वो ग्रुप है वो मतलब हम अंबिया कह सकते हैं, शुहदा है, सालिहीन है, जिनके बारे में ये फैसला हो चुका है कि इंद रब्बिहिम युरज़क़ून. दूसरा वो जमात है, वो ग्रुप है कि जिनका फैसला हो चुका है यानी अज़ाब के हवाले से, जैसे फ़िरौन, आले फ़िरौन है, अन्नार युरज़ून अलैहा गुदून व अशिया. तीसरा जो है जिनके बारे में मतलब मुअत्तल किया गया है फैसला कि उनका फैसला होने वाला है आखिरत के दिन. मगर यहाँ से जो अक्सर उलमा जो या हमने भी पढ़ा है कि एक हदीस का हवाला देते हैं कि एक दफा के हुज़ूर पाक सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम एक मकबरे से उनका गुजर हो रहा था, तो वहां से 2 कब्रों से चीखें आ रही थी. तो एक के बारे में ये था कि वो चुगलखोर था, दूसरे के बारे में ये है कि वो पेशाब की छींटों से नहीं बचता था. फिर हुज़ूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने उन्होंने एक टहनी उतारी, फिर उस कब्र पर रखी, तो फिर उसमें वो तखफीफ हुआ अजाब में. मतलब अगर यहाँ से ये तस्वर है कुरान पाक से हमें ये तस्वर मिलता है, तो फिर हम इस हदीस को कहाँ प्लेस करेंगे? तो ये मेरा सवाल है सर.
So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, you've asked about the grave punishment and specifically about a particular narrative which says that the Prophet was passing by the graves of 2 people in Medina and he placed a branch on their graves and he actually prayed for them that as long as this branch does not go dry, the punishment for them should be reduced. And he also heard the screams of the persons who were buried there. So this is the summary of the narrative itself. So we need to understand that as far as this particular narrative is concerned, it refers to the same people upon whom the Prophet had conclusively delivered the truth. And in spite of being convinced of them, they had persisted on denying the truth. And in all probability, these were the graves of 2 Jews of the city of Medina. And obviously, in such cases, the Prophet is given some extraordinary powers in which he is able to see God's promise being fulfilled. And this is just a case of the Prophet actually witnessing God's promise being fulfilled. And all that this means is that it was his prayer that as far as is possible, the Almighty should grant some mitigation in their punishment. And as far as the crime is concerned, that they indulged in backbiting, or the fact that they didn't wash themselves after their own urination. Again, this has to be understood in the light of the greater scheme of things. This is just one of the things that has been mentioned. What happens is that in narratives, people cut short a lot of details. So it's just that those details have not been mentioned here. Otherwise, it is absolutely evident that these were the graves of people on whom the truth had been unfolded in its ultimate way, and they were the graves of 2 people belonging to the people of the book. And as you have rightly pointed out, that for them, their own punishment had started in Barzakh, and they were the ones for whom the truth had already been conclusively conveyed, and so therefore their punishment had started in the abode of Barzakh.
थैंक यू सर. बट एक सवाल है कि सर कि मतलब कि अगर हम कहते हैं कि अजाब कब्र जो है कि हम उसको एक रॉन्ग कंसेप्शन, मतलब अभी जो जिनका फैसला अभी नहीं हुआ, जिनका फैसला अभी होना है.
But as I said, these are the 2 people for whom the truth had been unveiled. These were the Jews of Medina on whom the truth had been unveiled. The decision had been made about them. They had intentionally denied the truth, and they were among those people who were about to be punished, or who were eligible to be punished in the grave. So it's not that their punishment was deferred to the day of judgment. So the decision about them had already been made.
Our next question is from Rafia Khwaja. Please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Dr. Shehzad, what I understand that Islam allows blood money as a settlement of killing in certain cases. But what I like to ask you Can this also apply to rape cases? Recently, a rape victim's father made an out-of-court settlement with the accused person, and the court rejected it. But does Islam allow cases of rape to go like this, and the father can forgive the person who did the rape and accept money in place of it?
No, this is absolutely wrong. As far as the blood money is concerned, which is called diyat, it's only acceptable in the case of intentional murder. If the victim's heirs, they forgive the person, and also the state is convinced that this forgiveness is on merit. As far as rape is concerned, it's a heinous crime. I mean, either you don't report it and you forgive the victim, that's absolutely fine. But once a rape case is brought before the court, then the law has to take its course and there can be no settlement. I mean, the punishment for rape is, because it's such a heinous crime, once the court registers a case, so the law will take its course, the case will be heard, witnesses shall be called, and a proper punishment will be given. What can happen is that if you want to forgive the rape victim outside of court, before even registering the case, yes, you can forgive the person. I mean, the heirs can, or not the heirs, the victim herself, in this case, she's alive, and she can, if she thinks that she doesn't want to take the case to the court, she can just forgive them without accepting anything. But once the case is registered, then this cannot happen. It has to then go through its proper course.
But Shehzad, does Islam allow a rape case like this to go on? Can the victim forgive it? Would Islam allow her to do this?
Well, as I said, I mean, this forgiveness is something which is the right of every person. Who, if she thinks that, well, she would like to forgive the rapist, it's her choice. But as I said, in normal circumstances, this is generally not the case, because it's such a heinous crime that the heirs of, not the heirs, the relatives of the victim herself, they generally push the victim to take the matter to the court. But then there are instances in which families would like to hide such a happening for fear of their honor and their own respect being compromised in the society. So yes, there is a possibility. But as I said, this should be a personal choice of the victim.
The father forgave the rapist, but the court.
As I said, once you go to the court, there is no forgiveness, and the forgiveness has to be from the victim, not the father, and that too before you go to the court. You see, before you even register the case in the court, if on a personal basis the victim says that I'm going to forgive the rapist, yes, that is a possibility. But once, as I said repeatedly, that as soon as the case is registered, then the law will take its course.
The father, brothers, they can't forgive him.
Absolutely not. They cannot.
Thank you, Dr.
It is the victim's decision.
Thank you.
Najeem Khan, please go ahead.
Dr. just a quick one. I was actually following up some of your program and Javed Ghamidi Sah's program on Ruba, on food, basically, interest. And he mentioned something about, that, of course, he says giving food interest is allowed, but taking food is not allowed at all. And then he mentioned something about कर्ज के ऊपर अगर आप बेसिकली सूद वो है जो कर्ज के ऊपर आप पैसा लेते हैं, so I mean basically as per the definition I understood was that sood or ruba is basically the interest which you get if you're given a loan to someone. So under current scenario of banking, when we place a deposit with the bank, no, that is not, we can always argue that it's a curse to the bank, it's a loan to the bank, but it's basically a deposit placed with the bank. So would that qualify as a sood or ruba?
Yes, absolutely. Because you see, if you read the agreement that you make in the savings account, the bank is authorized to use your money. And that authority is given by virtue of the fact that this is basically a loan that you have given them. So basically, when you are earning through a savings account, it is on interest. It is based on interest. and therefore charging of interest in any way is forbidden in the Quran. And if you're talking about a savings account, as I said, in on all savings account, the general agreement between the lender and the bank itself is that although you'll be able to deposit the money, but the bank has the authority to use that money for its own projects, and the bank then gives you a fixed return regardless of whatever goes on in the businesses to which it lends this money. So it is bound by contract that the certain amount, which is called interest, shall be paid back to the depositor.
There is a follow-up. If we read the finer prints of the banking forms which we sign, I think it does mention somewhere that we might end up losing that money, which is one of the conditions for saying that it is not smooth. Secondly, I've been following up that there have been sometime by the Egyptian scholars. They have actually mentioned, there are some debates saying that in the current scenario, the banking system, the deposit place for them is not considered as a, ruba. So I don't know, can you throw some light on that?
As I said, you see, riba is something which is always charged on the loan that you give. So I think all that you need to do is just see the agreement that you make with the savings account bank. You'll see that it says treat it as a loan, and the bank actually uses your money as a debt, as a loan, and then invests that money, or either it invests it or further lends it out to people, to potential clients, who then pay interest to the bank, and which it actually pays back to the depositor. Obviously, it keeps a sum for its own income and its for own service providing, but at the same time, it returns the money to the depositor, the fixed amount. Yes, there are some improvements which have been made in some of the Islamic banks, but if you go deep down, you'll still see that there's still a lot to be desired, because they have changed the terms. I mean, the name of the terms, and instead of calling it riba, they start calling it profit. But the agreement, as you read it, you'll find that it's just a question of the facade being changed. It's like a eyewash. Otherwise, the deposit is, in fact, that you do give it as a loan, and the return that you get is in the form of interest. And another thing that you might need to know is that there are scholars who argue that because of inflation, the money that you have deposited in the bank, it is being depreciated every day. And so if you're earning some amount on that deposit, then it's only as much as the inflation should allow you. And so therefore there are scholars who say that if you adjust your inflation with the interest that you gain, that should be okay. And I do think that this is a fair adjudication by them as well. But personally, I would still not go along with them, because what happens is that the terms, although have, they have changed the terms, but the spirit and the soul is still the same. And also the terminology is still the same. I mean, you use the word riba, and you know that the money that you're getting actually is the same money, and even though you are adjusting it for inflation. So, I mean, it's a matter of personal choice. Otherwise, as I said, there is this option which certain scholars give, that you can charge as much as the inflation rate allows you, so that your money, the core value of your money, it doesn't go down.
I'm sorry to ask you something on the same line. I hope I'm not asking too many questions. Actually, when I read that article sometime back of an Egyptian scholar, the logic which he gave was, there are people in this world who are not, good in businesses and other things. So bank basically is doing a kind of a agent's role. They are taking money from people who have excess money, and they are actually lending the money out to people who are professional, who do investments, who do businesses. And because of that, lot of people, their jobs are provided, by those companies. So basically, if I am giving deposit to a bank or any institution, I am actually doing good community. I'm giving my money, which I'm not able to use properly. The bank will look for, people. Of course, bank do their due diligence. They make sure that they lend money to people who are doing good businesses, and then those businesses they hire people. They have like a lot of people, bread and butter depend on that businesses. So instead of me just keeping the money with me, if I keep the money, give the money to the bank lends the money. A lot of people actually get benefit by working in those companies, and of course, banks take interest from them, based on their businesses, and
Yes,
ultimately
I
they.
do understand. I do understand this logic because a lot of people have given this logic, and I don't see any weight in this logic because you see, simply the fact that you employ a lot of people and you provide employment in a business which is regarded as immoral, because you see, interest in itself is an immoral transaction. Lending in Islam is basically meant to help others and not to extort money from others. This is the concept of lending. Lending is basically to help out others and not to earn money by lending money. So earning money on a loan has always been regarded as riba, and this is there are instances in which the exploitative nature of this is reduced. For example, if you are financing an asset, if you're financing an asset, then the extent of exploitation is almost diminished, because in that case, what happens is that what you're doing is you are basically either buying a car, or a house, and on mortgage you're giving back some amount. So in that case, because the money is converted into an asset, the things drastically change. But in other forms, in which the money still remains money, and you lend out to people who actually might go bankrupt or who might make a lot of money, it's regardless for the bank. You see, all that the bank would like to do is to earn money through lending. It doesn't have any bearing on the fact that whether the money lent is actually being morally used in the proper way. Maybe the money lent is used in a business which has gone bankrupt, or maybe it's not earning enough, and it's a cause of exploitation. So a bank keeps his eyes shut towards the lender. Towards the person who has to whom he has lent the money, because as long as it's getting the payback, that is all it wants. And the lender might or the acquirer might have to go through to great lengths in furnishing that money. So basically, we need to understand that interest in itself is an immoral transaction, and when it is supplemented by, as I said, it's replaced by assets in the form of houses and or cars, then the matter drastically changes, and it cannot be called as interest. And as in some countries, it's called a rent transaction, because in that particular case, you have bought a car or you bought a house, and the amount that you're paying for that asset that you bought is basically rent for that commodity until you become the owner of that commodity. So I think we need to. This is a school of thought. Egyptians have come up with this model, and the reasoning that you have presented is nothing new. But in my humble opinion, it's still flawed in its origin.
Thank you. Muazzam Ali, you're up next. Please go ahead.
डॉक्टर साहब, मेरा सवाल ये है जनाब ईसा अलैहिस्सलाम के बारे में कि हमारे यहाँ की ज़्यादातर जितनी भी तफासीर हैं उसमें यही है कि ईसा अलैहिस्सलाम बगैर बाप के पैदा हुए, जबकि जो बाइबल या हमें हिस्ट्री बताती है उसमें यह है कि ईसा अलैहिस्सलाम के वालिद का नाम यूसुफ था। और कुरान पाक में हमें कहीं भी इस बात का क्लियरली नहीं बताया गया कि जनाब ईसा अलैहिस्सलाम बगैर बाप के पैदा हुए थे, जबकि हम ये जानते हैं कि इस दुनिया में जो भी इंसान पैदा होते हैं वो मेल और फीमेल के उसके बाद ही उससे पैदा होते हैं। जबकि अल्लाह ताला सूरह अनआम में अपने बारे में फरमाते हैं कि जो अहले किताब हैं इन्होंने अल्लाह ताला के लिए बेटे और बेटियां मंसूब की हुई हैं, जबकि अल्लाह के यहाँ औलाद कैसे हो सकती है जबकि उसकी कोई बीवी ही नहीं। जब अल्लाह ताला अपने लिए ये एक रूल सेटअप कर रहे हैं कि बगैर बीवी के औलाद होना अल्लाह के लिए भी पॉसिबल नहीं है, तो तब हम ये कैसे बिलीव कर सकते हैं कि जनाब मरियम की जो औलाद है, जनाब ईसा, वो बगैर बाप के पैदा हो गए?
इसलिए कि this is an established history. You see, as far as the Bible is concerned, you have to understand it. Although it mentions Joseph to be the father of Prophet Jesus, but then again, it is known that he had children maybe from his previous wife. But as far as Mary is concerned, she never conceived from Joseph. So, in my first point, I'm just trying to answer what the Bible has said. So that does not necessitate that having a husband also necessitates the fact that Jesus was born because of a copulation between the husband and wife. In spite of marriage, I mean, this could have taken place after Jesus' birth, that they could have married, or there are a number of other possibilities. But the primary reason here is that established history tells us that he was born without a father. And precisely for this reason, the Quran calls him as Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus, son of Mary. This is not the custom of the Quran to ascribe the son to a mother. And this was a miraculous birth. And I mean, the Almighty can always work miracles and do what, I mean, in certain exceptional cases, he doesn't need to follow the general rule. So that is what has happened here. So established history tells us, I mean, you can see through the Quran, the title Isa ibn Maryam itself tells us, and that he was born without a father, and the fact that there are insinuations, I would say, in the Quran, which clearly also tell us that he was born through, I mean, he was called Kalimatullah, which means that he was born through a blow from God, or from a breath of God, which is called Kalimatullah. There are certain words which were uttered, which of course refer to the fact that the Almighty just said kun. The word kun means be, and it happened. It started to happen. So I think the word Kalimatullah and the fact that Isa ibn Maryam is called Jesus, son of Mary, the father is not mentioned, and even before that, established history. All these things tell us that he was born without a father.
डॉक्टर साहब, सवाल ये है कि अगर इसमें एस्टेब्लिश हिस्ट्री में ये भी मैंने पढ़ा है कि जनाब ईसा के वालिद का नाम यूसुफ था, और ये भी मतलब बाइबल में भी मेंशन है. तो सवाल ये है कि अल्लाह ताला अपने
please let me tell you, this is not established history. This is just a statement from the Bible. One statement from the Bible does not make something an established history. Established history means that generation after generation reports the same fact in such a wide manner that there is absolutely no chance of them colluding on falsehood. So this is what we call tawatur. And history has been, established history is always narrated through tawatur. As far as the Bible is concerned, Bible has just given a statement, and I think that statement also can be interpreted in the meaning that if Joseph was the father of Jesus, then obviously this could have happened after the birth of Jesus. I mean, a number of scenarios can be imagined, and even the statement of the Bible can be, I mean, interpreted rightly. It doesn't go against the fact that he didn't have a father. So Joseph was not a father to Jesus. He could have been father of some other, I mean, to his own children before getting married to Mary. And it could always be the fact that they lived together and never had children, and had lived as a husband and wife. It's not necessary to have children. So I'm just telling you that the statement of the Bible can be interpreted in a different way as well.
Mubashshar, you're next. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, I have a question related to the book History of Quran, your own book. Sir, this where you explain how to in the research methodology. In the second point, where you have quoted Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, there are 5 reasons. I can understand the first and the second, but third is there you have stated thirdly, if it is against the consensus. Now, consensus has 2 extremities point of views. One is ascribed to Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal that there is no consensus, and then we see in everyday life everyone is claiming consensus about everything. So what is meant exactly here? Where do this point stand? And second question to pertaining to the same is in the 4th and 5th reason, I do not find any difference, because 4th says something which had to be known by everyone is just narrated through one narrator, and 5thly is something is reported by one person which naturally should be narrated through tawatur. So what is the difference between 4 and 5, and how do you define the consensus on the basis of which we reject these?
Well, I would need to have the text before me. Unfortunately, I don't have the text before me. So what I can say is that please send me the text of Khatib Baghdadi. And I mean, you can have my number, and I could answer you after reading through those texts. So I need to have the Arabic text before me, before I can answer that.
I just want you to suggest me some tafsir of Quran besides Al-Bayan, Tadabbur al-Quran and Tafhim al-Quran. If someone wants to study comparatively, so what other book do you recommend?
I would recommend Tafsir of Ibn Kasir. It's translated into Urdu also. It's also available in the English language. So it will be a good comparison with the traditional school of thought.
Ahsan, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Maryam. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Dr. Shehzad, so I have an understanding that the Quran is sent so that we can understand it. When we read it, we should understand it. It's a message. And while I have this understanding, which I know is correct, I also have this confusion because Quran is also supposed to be recited. At least from the background that I come, it's always emphasized that to get rewards, you need to recite it in Arabic. Now, if I don't understand Arabic, but I know how to recite it, and I know, inshallah, I would get reward for it. My question here is, would I get the same amount of reward if I, instead of reciting it, I read it and understand it in English and study it? So here my question is general. So it's like, if I have, let's say, half an hour that I give to Quran every day, how should I sort of split it? Like, should I say 15 minutes for recitation and 15 minutes for understanding, or do you suggest I should rather just spend all the time in understanding it? I would still get the same rewards.
I think what we need to understand is that the reward is not going to come by merely reading the Quran. I mean, this is a big misconception. Reward will only come once you follow the Quran, once you understand and start following it. Merely reading the Quran does not carry any reward. This is based on an erroneous misconception and a very weak narrative of the Prophet. You must have heard it. I mean, everyone has heard it, that if you read one letter, you'll get 10 units of reward. And therefore, people think that if they read Alif Lam Mim, that would actually be instrumental in giving them 30 units of reward, and for every word, you'll have 10 units of reward. This is a weak narrative, and it has become very popular, and it has absolutely no basis. So what we need to understand is, if you want to earn reward, there are so many other charitable things that you can do. But if you want to earn reward through the Quran, then it has to be by following what the Quran says, by adjusting to be the person which Quran wants us to be. That is what will make you a person who will gain reward from the Quran. Now, as far as reading the Quran itself is concerned, I always suggest that there are two routes that you can adopt. And I think every one of us should benefit from these two routes. One of them is the short-term available route, and that is, whenever you pick up the Quran, just read the translation. And if you're comfortable in Urdu or English or any other language, just go through the translation. And at the same time, start learning the language of the Quran, so that once the Quran is read, you're able to understand directly without even needing a translation. And there are very good websites and very good apps which we do suggest, which will make you go through this exercise in about a year or so, and you'll be in a way proficient enough to read the Quran. Yes, of course, vocabulary would be one thing which you'll keep on adding. But other than that, if you are able to learn Quranic Arabic, what this will do is this will actually make you independent of any translation. So the immediate and the short-term route is that you just read the translation, and parallel to that, begin learning Quranic Arabic, so that after a year or year and a half's work, you are able to do away with the translation. And as you read the Quran, or as you hear the Quran being recited, you'll be amazed that the language of the Quran has such a potent effect on our hearts that it does not only convey the message, it also motivates us to action, to do what the Quran is saying, which is precisely what I said earlier on, that the real reward in regard to the Quran is to follow the Quran, to be the person what the Quran wants us, not just reading it. And as I suggested, that these are the two routes which all of us can adopt, and it's just a question of giving time and importance, and you are already giving time. So I would suggest that you give some time to reading a translation, and some other time to learning the language of the Quran, which I said is now available thanks to this COVID thing, in which a lot of apps have been developed in the last 2 or 3 years, which you can just, independently, without even needing a teacher, you can learn the language of the Quran.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Just one small, quick clarification. In Quran itself, also there is this. I think it's in chapter Surah Al-Isra, where the recitation of dawn is preferred. So here, in some places, recitation and some specific way of recitation is emphasized. And so, is it like even here the recitation implies understanding while reading?
Of course, of course. I mean, you see, the Quran was addressed to the people in Arabia who knew Arabic. I mean, they were not. I mean, the Quran was not addressing us who were not aware of Arabic, or which Arabic was not their first language. The Quran was revealed to the Arabs, and for them, Arabic was their first language. It was their native language. So there was no question of the fact that they would not be able to understand it. So we have to be at par, I mean, with them.
Right, got it. Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Shehzad.
Thank you. Our next question is from Usman Liaqat. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, according to anthropologists, earlier humans could not speak. They could only communicate through signs. And they also provide evidence for it. But we know from Islamic literature that Adam was the first human being on earth, and he could speak. And his conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also narrated in the Holy Quran. So what language did Adam speak? This is my first question. And the second one is, if you accept this theory that human learned language through long period of evolution, then where do we place the story of Adam being the first human to speak the language?
Well, you see, the Quran itself speaks of a certain form of evolution which took place within the species of human beings. So initially there were humanoids that were created from earth, as the Quran says in Surah Sajda, which means that the Almighty created mankind directly from earth, and they were born from the earth. And after some time, the Quran says, "Summa ja'ala naslahu min sulalatin min ma'in mahin." The new generations were later born by the procreation of these generations, which were initially born directly from earth. So it's not that Adam was the first human being per se. The fact is, Adam was the first human being selected for a conversation with the Almighty, and he was selected as a prophet of God. Otherwise, there was this evolution within the species of human beings in which they were first humanoids, or people who evolved from human beings. So I'm not talking about Darwinian evolution, of course, which refers to the fact that there was an interspecies evolution. No, the Quran talks about evolution within the genre or within the species of human beings. So initially, some generations of human beings, so there was some disruption. So the computer restarted, and now we're going to resume. I'm not sure what we were talking about.
Yeah, you were talking about the evolution within the genre of human beings.
Yeah. So yes, I was actually referring to the fact that this theory from anthropology is going to fit in perfectly, because we're not talking about the first human being. What we're talking about the fact that generations passed in this first, I would say, phase in which mankind was being created directly from the earth. And then after several generations, perhaps what happened was that in the second phase, they were able to procreate, produce their own offspring through their own intercourses. And in the third phase, the Almighty says that "Summa sawwahu fanafakhtu fihi min ruhi." In the third phase, the Almighty perfected them and gave them the divine spark and the awareness of good and evil. And then after that third phase, it says that it selected two individuals, Adam and Eve, after that third phase. So these three phases passed before, that final human beings were made, and there were several of them maybe, and from all those, one pair was selected, and the Almighty chose Adam to be a prophet. And as I said, in that course of time, it could have been that the language was already evolving, and people were obviously started off with sign language, which seems to be the case, and then voices and tones, they were evolved and they developed, and out of those voices and tones, languages arose. So I think that it fits in with the theory of anthropology. And as I said, Adam was the first prophet, and by the time he was chosen as a prophet, language had reached that level. And as far as the question is concerned, that what exactly was that language, we have no knowledge of that. People do claim that it was Arabic, but I don't think this is correct. It's just conjecture. It's something which the Quran has not disclosed us. It's something which we can always conjecture about, but we don't have any definite basis to ascertain what exactly the language was.
Asif Ali, you're up next. Please go ahead.
My question is related to the treatment to the parents, because it is, well understood that as the sons and daughters, with how you treat your parents, but there could be some exceptions when basically the parents, for example, especially the father, is abusive or not well giving the well treatment to the son or daughters. So in those exceptions, how is there any condition put on the parents that they will do certain things, and then only the basically sons and daughters should treat them? And if there is any condition, what is those? And if not, then how in those exceptions we will basically, or the sons and daughters should treat their parents?
I think this is such a natural phenomena that generally, because of the fact that parents have created you and they have sacrificed their lives and time, and so much effort has gone into their upbringing, that this seldom is the case. But yes, there are exceptions in which the parents, they become abusive, they become, there are stories, there are real stories of incest as well involved, in which a father might have this thing done. It's just such a heinous thing that he would have relations with his daughter, forcible relations. So all these things, of course, they are extreme conditions. But I would say that in this scenario, if the daughter chooses to be silent, or maybe not having a relation with her father, it should be justified. But having said that, if only any cordial, if no cordial relation can be maintained, but then of course, yes, if just a question of maybe saying salam alaikum assalam or something to that effect can be maintained, this could be one area in which someone can go for that. But as I said, there could be extreme situations in which it's like totally having break in ties between the son and between the children and their parents. As I said, this could be extreme, so some extreme cases. But even in those extreme cases, if the children are able to maintain that minimum level of communication, in which realizing the fact that yes, something very, very, very bad happened, but still the fact is that they raised them and they did a lot for them, and so therefore they still have some right on them. And if they are able to just maintain a very small relationship, that would be maybe something that they can work for.
So in other words, you're saying that, not necessary that is the condition, is that the word which we use is that Ahsan, and the treatment of in the category of that in Urdu, I think I can explain that in Ahsan, but in those cases.
As I said, what happens is that this varies from case to case. It's so natural. When you are at the suffering end, the nature of your suffering is going to govern your relationship with your father or your mother. I think if the nature of that suffering is so extreme that you choose to remain silent or maybe not talk to them for a while, it could be justified. And ultimately, if they're able to make up for that and just maintain a very, very, very minimum level of communication, then perhaps this is something that they could, as I said, aspire for. But you see, it always is something when you talk about human relations that it's difficult to give a sharp guideline. All that you can say is as best as you can, as much as you can. Don't break your ties. Don't totally cut off your relations with your parents. But as I said, there could be some justification in which the nature of the behavior of the parents is such that it totally puts off their children from them.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next question comes from Aruba Shafqat. Please go ahead.
Okay, so my question is related to transgenders. I asked that question in the previous session too, but now I have a different question about it. I wanted to ask that, I don't know if a lot of people know about it or not, but there have been a very hype about a festival conducted by the trans community in Pakistan, and the videos are like going viral and all this stuff. It was very disturbing. And on the page they have on Instagram, I watched a video, and that was about a university in Canada that had a Islamic Studies department of that university is actually collaborating with them to conduct the festival, which is, I mean, this festival was already conducted like way before. So my question basically is that how do we as a community or as people, we protect ourselves and our children and people who are who don't really know about this, because they a lot of the videos that are circulating, they actually bring evidences, I mean, whatever they think are evidences from Islam about how it's okay and how whatever they're doing is fine, how like everything is just okay. I just wanted you to
So can you explain what exactly are they doing? I mean, transgender, being a transgender is a phenomenon.
Yes, I know, but they're actually gay marriages and stuff like, which is actually the stuff that is wrong in Islam, what is considered wrong in Islam.
You see, the line which is for things to be right and wrong is clear, is very distinct. And to be a transgender is, I would say, it's like a trial from God. And we have to treat them in a very kind way, and they themselves have to be obviously following the guideline, which is a general moral guideline. So any deviation from that moral guideline on the pretext that they are transgenders, of course, this is something which should be checked by state authorities, and some sort of ruling should be made in this regard. And using the pretext of being a transgender and then indulging in all sorts of activities which are what we can call as inappropriate cannot be justified. And I think that all that we need to do is need to get educated that what exactly is this phenomena, and as far as morality is concerned, it's an inbuilt thing in all of us, and we all know what right and wrong are, and we absolutely know where obscenity starts and when this thing kicks in. So all that we need to do is create that awareness, and if they are justifying their acts on the basis of religion, then obviously they will be presenting some Quranic verses or some narratives of the Prophet or whatever. I mean, they would be having some substantive arguments. So they need to be evaluated and critically analyzed and answered. I think instead of getting disturbed or instead of being so worried, the best thing would be that if they think that what they're doing is justified on the basis of religion, then let's very calmly and coolly analyze those things which they think justify what they're doing.
Yes, and I also learned that there's probably a trans or gay mosque in Canada that they're I mean, I just learned in a video, and that too was like very but I mean, the fact that an Islamic Studies department from a university in Canada is actually like collaborating with that was also very very shocking.
I think we need to be more specific. I mean, what exactly is the collaboration about? As I said, I mean, if they are justifying what they're doing, that it is fine in religion, then I think let's sit and see what exactly they are presenting in the name of religion, and how do they think that religion is being? I mean, they are justifying what they're doing on the basis of religion. So you see, what happens is that we have to give the other person the opportunity to present his or her case. And there could be misunderstandings, there could be lack of communication, there could be a number of things that happen. And you see, one thing that we need to understand is that the Almighty has given everyone the choice to live. So things like devil worship, I mean, devil worship is still going on in many parts of the world. People do all sorts of unimaginable things when they think that they're worshiping the devil. And there's so many other cults. If I go on and narrate to you some of the cults that still exist, it's so inappropriate what they do. But as I said, that when they do something, they have a justification. And if that justification is something that can be challenged or that can be answered or that can be critically evaluated, so that is the way that we should approach things instead of getting worried. Because you see, this thing is going to end nowhere, because as I said, the Almighty has given the choice to live the way everyone wants to live. Yes, they will be called to account one day, but in this world, all sorts of things happen.
Our next question comes from Umar Farooq. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. My question is about the nafs, or what we say ruh. What can we give as the evidence for the ruh? As we see, human being is the constituent of two things, body and nafs. So body is evident, but what are the arguments that we can give for the existence of ruh?
There are so many arguments. I mean, the Quran is full of them. We ourselves are aware of the fact that our own personality is different from our physical being, and that personality is housed in our soul. So if you cut off or chop off our limbs, the personality will still be there. I mean, as long as your connection, the connectivity part is there. The Quran tells us that the nafs is entirely different. It says nafsim wa ma sawaha, and look at the soul, the way we have perfected it, which tells us that it was different from the body. And there I would say hundreds of verses which speak of the fact that our soul is claimed by, the Quran tells us that the angels will come and they will claim the souls of disbelievers. There's one verse in the Quran, by actually hitting them and punching them on their necks and telling them that you are people who disbelieved in God and we have come to claim your souls. So if you're asking about evidence from the Quran, it is copiously found in the Quran.
I know about the evidence from the Quran, but the thing is, like, with science we cannot prove the nafs, because it's not the matter of science. So what are the philosophical arguments about the existence of nafs?
That you have to tell me. I'm not a philosopher. I'm basically a religious scholar. What you can tell me is that this is how philosophy looks upon it or challenges it. And by the way, what I can tell you from my own limited knowledge of philosophy, that there have been philosophers who believed in the fact that the soul exists. For example, Socrates, the king of all philosophers, he actually said that there is this divine spark which is found in all of us, and he was referring to the soul. And this divine spark is one which is responsible for the awareness of good and evil, for our own conscience. So he is one of them. Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher, he is also another person. And you'll find them, in different eras being present. But people who deny the existence of soul, you just need to Google them and find out the reason.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Our next question is from Nur Kamil Afridi. Please go ahead.
डॉक्टर साहब, पहले तो आपका शुक्रिया, आपने हमारे लिए वक्त निकाला। मेरा ये सवाल था कि ये बाइबल में हम जो है यूहन्ना आरिफ का मुकाशफा पढ़ते हैं, रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की पेशेनगोई के लिए बादशाहों का बादशाह और वो खुदावंदों का खुदावंद है, इस तरह के अल्फाज हैं। तो ये खुदावंद का मतलब क्या है? क्या ये इब्रानी लफ्ज का ऐसा तर्जुमा है जिसको उन्होंने इसी तरह तर्जुमा नहीं किया, या इसका क्या सही मतलब है?
Kindly send me the exact text. I have to look at the text to answer your question. I just cannot say it offhand. Please send me the text, the exact sense. Please kindly email me or WhatsApp me the sentences that you need to have interpreted.
So, Ali Raza, please go ahead. You're up next.
डॉक्टर साहब, मैंने मुसलमानों की अक्सरियत को ये कहते हुए सुना है कि बिग बैंग जो है वो कुरान से साबित है। तो इसको प्रूफ करने के लिए ये लोग जो है कुरान की सूरह अंबिया की आयत का रेफरेंस देते हैं, जिसमें अल्लाह ताला ये फरमा रहे हैं कि क्या काफिरों ने नहीं देखा कि ज़मीन और आसमान जुड़े हुए थे, इसको फिर हमने अलग अलग किया। इस पर मैंने गांधी साहब को एक उनका छोटा सा क्लिप सुना था, जिस पर गांधी साहब ने ये कहा कि ये आयत इस बारे में बात नहीं कर रही, तो ये किस बारे में बात कर रही है?
Actually, we need to pick up a good translation of the Quran. Please see what the Holy Quran says, and please see what Ghamidi Sahib has written in his tafsir. Basically, it tells us that at the time that this earth was being formed, it was the heavens or the sky which provided the rain or the moisture, and that moisture was used by the earth As you can see, the words which were used in Arabic are kanata rataka, which means that they were joined, and later on, when the pores of the skies they were opened, rain started to pour, and as a result of that, vegetation sprouted from the earth. So the Quran is not talking about the Big Bang; it is basically talking about the evidence or the providence that you can see how the Almighty made or painstakingly created this earth, so that people should understand that there's going to be a day of accountability. This earth has not been made, or these heavens have not been made up for amusement. They have been made for a purpose. So the word kanata rataka is generally interpreted to mean that, well, they were joined together and they were suddenly flashed apart as if the Big Bang had occurred. Quran is not a book of science. It's basically a book of guidance regarding the hereafter. And what happens is that at times it does involve science in some of its discourses. For example, the fetus, the stages which go on in the fetus, and some of the other things. But per se, it does not talk about science. So this particular verse, as I said, if you would like to know the more details, just pick up the tafsir of these two scholars. Otherwise, it's just a question of telling us that how painstakingly the Almighty created the heavens and the earth. And when they were joined together, it doesn't mean that they were joined like this. All it says that their pores were not open. The sky, the pores of the sky, they opened, and rain came down. And as a result of that, vegetation sprouted from the earth. And this is how the Almighty was able to bring life on this earth. It's not a question of Big Bang here.
Okay, sir. बहुत शुक्रिया आपका. Thank you.
Rabia Jamil, please go ahead.
My question is regarding Amar bil Maruf and Nahi Anil Munkar, like how this is applicable in our daily life. Let me give you an example. Like if a father or a brother is asking her daughter or sister to wear hijab or cover herself, तो क्या ये जो ऑर्डर है ये अमर बिल मारूफ और नहीं अनिल मुनकर के अंदर आएगा या नहीं? और आई हैव सीन मेनी पीपल जो डेली लाइफ में ऐसे काम कर रहे होते हैं, किसी को भी लावजा रोक रहे हैं और इस चीज का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं कि ये तो हमें अल्लाह ने करने के लिए कहा है कि अमर बिल मारूफ और नहीं अनिल मुनकर. तो प्लीज इसका क्लियर बता दें कि डेली रूटीन.
You see, the first misconception here is the word Maruf and Munkar. They don't relate to religious directives like hijab or keeping a beard or doing anything which is a religious command. The word Maruf refers to universal truths or the universal good, like, for example, justice, truth, things that our human nature holds dear to. And Munkar is the opposite of that. Like lying or being unjust or exploiting others or embezzling others' funds, etc. So Maruf and Munkar, they don't relate to religious Maruf and religious Munkar. That is not the context here. The word Maruf and Munkar relates to things which are universally accepted as good, that is Maruf, and things which are universally accepted as wrong, and that is Munkar. So cheating others or lying or defrauding others, these are examples of Munkar. And similarly, being just to others and being not lying to others, being truthful, these are examples of being Maruf. So this is a wrong implementation or wrong understanding of the words, that people generally think that Maruf refers to the directives of Islam. This is not the case. And as far as these directives of Islam are concerned, they address the individual, and no one has the authority to force their opinion on their wives or on their daughters in any way. I mean, it's a question of they themselves adopting it if they want to. Maruf and Munkar, as I said, it relates to universal good and universal evils. And so in that particular case, if you find people doing something wrong, for example, if they're cheating, they're lying, they're doing bad things, you can always counsel them and tell them that they should not do this. And that too in our circle of authority, which means that people who are under our influence, you can urge them. You cannot forcibly stop them. Even, what you can do is you can advise them. You can suggest to them that you are doing something evil or you're doing something right. You can urge them to do right. You can forbid them to do wrong. But this has to be through exhortation, through your tongue. You cannot forcibly stop people if they are bent upon doing something wrong. You cannot forcibly put people on the right path. Again, this is something which is beyond our authority. So first thing that we need to understand is the meaning of Maruf and Munkar. And second thing that we need to understand is that it relates to suggesting and telling others and not forcing our opinion on others.
Okay, so I'll just let the participants know that although we still have some questions, inshallah we'll be holding this session again in a month, once we start March, the first Saturday of March. So inshallah, bring your questions again. And until then, any concluding remarks?
Also, if people have questions, I have weekly Q&A as well. So after every session, I have 2 Q&As every week on Saturday and Sunday. So if they don't want to wait until next month, they can always participate and always ask questions every week in these sessions.
Thank you.